very warm welcome to our viewers. My name is Bhavik Kothari, and this is the VLLOW channel. VLLOW, as some of you may not know, it's the global platform, it's a global DTC platform for cricket equipment. Please go check us out, www.VLLOWsports.com. Again, it's www.VLLOWsports.com. And let me start by saying that this is the first of our podcast interview series, and we have our very first guest. I am extremely excited and extremely honored to have Coach CD as our first guest.
Thank you for having me over.
Welcome, welcome. So there is a lot that I want to cover in this interview. So I was, doing a lot of research on my own, and there was so much I found on your background, your academic credentials, your coaching certifications, your experience as a player, and also your experience as a coach. So there is a whole lot to cover today, and I'm going to do my best to cover as much as possible for the benefit of our viewers. So how are you doing today, sir?
I'm excited. Honestly, it's been a lovely day, bright and sunny outside, unlike the Midwest climate. But excited to be here, and in all probability, sharing my views of what I think of this glorious game, and reaching out to the people who I feel can benefit most from this particular podcast.
Awesome, awesome. So I think it's important to go back and kind of begin where you started, right? More as a player. So what got you interested in cricket? At what point you felt like this was your passion and you would want to do this for as long as you can? And talk about maybe some of the experiences also, but on some of the people in your life that were instrumental in kind of propelling you to have such a long career in cricket.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. It's the first I've heard of that. Let's say cricket for me was initially as a child a summer sport. So when we started playing the game, it was all about playing what sport was visible on TV. So whether it's the Soccer World Cup with Diego Maradona playing there, we were all soccer players, or the Hockey World Cup, or whether it came down to the Cricket World Cup, we just followed whatever sport was on TV. Going back to when I really started taking it seriously, I think a shift when I made from my hometown back in India in Visakhapatnam to the mecca of cricket in India, Mumbai. That's where I realized this sport has so many more things to offer and so much of reach, and the amount of passion that Mumbai brought to the game, that really attracted me to the sport. And the opportunities I got in Mumbai, I was grateful for them. But to go back to your actual question of how I got into the sport, I think my dad used to play cricket for his office club, besides other sport as well. And I would tag along. And like all good sons, I was the perennial 12th man for his office club. It all starts off with that. And I took it from there, taking it from there. The interest ignited in the sport, and using dad's bat and shoes, and sometimes even his trousers, which were sometimes a little bigger, before I represented the junior state at the under 15, under 17, 11, where I started getting my own kit and stuff. So it started from there, and Mumbai really helped me take off my game. So what really inspired me?
Not to interrupt, but was that move from Vizag to Mumbai a conscious one, where you said, okay, I want to play cricket and so I have to be in Mumbai, or did it just happen and you ended up in, as you described, the mecca of
so interesting, very interesting. I was posted in Mumbai. I joined the Indian Navy at a very young, tender age of 17 years, and my first posting was in Mumbai, and coming to the as you said, the financial capital of India, the mecca of cricket, the glitzy lights, they all got to me. I would say initially, and I was just whiling away my time there. And when one of my senior officers over there saw me and during one of our unit practices, and he says, "You've got the game to go further. Why don't you really put an effort into it?" And that sort of got me thinking, and I found good training partners, which I think is very important, that you find a partner who challenges you, who's better than you, and I was able to get that. And I'd like to call out that gentleman's name. His name is Mr. Mohammed Usman, and he really inspired me to keep pushing, keep perfecting my game, and I owe a lot of my success in this game to him.
Okay. So, so it sounds like your dad and this gentleman named Muhammad Usman were pretty critical in your in your passion to the game that developed, and it was so serendipitous that you ended up in Mumbai. So things kind of fell in place, but it still sounds like there is Mumbai is a very competitive place for cricket, and I'm sure it was the case even back in the day. So maybe if you can talk about some of the obstacles or the hurdles or struggles you faced in your journey as a cricketer, and what are some of the key lessons that you learned from it.
Yeah, so I think the initial challenge that every cricketer faces, one is does he have the right facilities to practice in, right? So coming into a central government organization like the Indian Navy, they had their own fields, they had their own grounds. So that sort of leapfrogged me into a place where I was able to get the facilities. Then comes the term of getting the right guidance and the right coaching at the right time. I think a lot of kids do struggle with this. A lot of parents are challenged to find the right academy, the right mix for their players. And so a lot of research goes into that. The parents themselves, the kids themselves, the reputation of the academy. So I would say a lot of lucky guys do get in at the first shot, but for most it's a trial and error method. And the final challenge that I faced was finding great equipment. I think in a post that I had written called on Tools of the Trade, I wrote about my experiences in that. And most of the equipment that we buy in sports stores are not really catered to you, are not really catered to the individual's needs. So you try to manage with them. So even though I did play first class cricket for close to 9 years and was involved in many a battle, my one struggle would always be to find a bat that fitted me. So I think if I may just shortlist it down, I think facilities, right guidance at the right time, because your sporting age runs by you very quickly, and finding the right equipment. I think these three challenges were there, and yeah, I guess I got lucky in a couple of them, but one I always struggled, and that was in regards to finding the great bat.
That's true. That's so true. And do you think those challenges have kind of sorted themselves out over time, or do you think that is still the case? In a market like India, where cricket has been going on for a long time, but also, and I know we'll talk about this as in your experiences playing in the US or coaching in the US. But do you think those equipment-related challenges have sorted them out over time, or they still exist?
Yeah, I would say there's been a minuscule apartment or a minuscule development, I would say, in helping people find the right mix for them. But there's still so much work to be done. To put it in a small brief, I would definitely say the challenge still exists. I just see a lot of batters playing with bats that are either the wrong height, the wrong weight, and I keep coming back to that time. By the actual time you find the bat that fits for you, find the bat that's the right weight for you, you've already lost a couple of years and you're always playing catch up. So getting that right equipment, I think, is something that every parent needs to take as a priority. They need to really go out and see what are the things available in the market. And yeah, I'm sure once they find the right mix, it's the boy's curtain for the bowlers as a batting point of view is what I would say. Because once a batsman feels comfortable, comfortable leads to a good mental relaxed state, and we know the results of a good mental relaxed state are most probably good decisions rather than bad.
And I want to cover some of these aspects, like some of the physicalities of the bat, or some of the different features of the bat that are instrumental in helping the player reach his potential, or perform to his potential. There was one more thing about your background that we wanted to hit, especially your time when you were a player, is the naval experience. I got to believe that a lot of life skills or values that must have formed at the naval services, some of those would be transferred over or transferable, and would have played a huge role in your success as a player and a coach. So maybe if you can delve deeper into that.
Yeah, I think one of the most important factors that I look back at my naval career and what it has taught me in life and sport in general, and everyone would agree me, the armed forces goes with one word, and that is discipline. Right? For me, the discipline, when I look at it from that particular aspect of my whole life, was not about a crisp salute or landing up on time when my time was needed. The discipline was, were you as disciplined when no one was watching? Were you doing your job? I guess when I was on watch duty and there was nobody watching me, was I doing it to the best of my ability? I think discipline is about, what it has taught me is, when my friends are out partying, am I preparing for a game the next day? When I have to go out and my coach gives me a task and says, I want you to do 20 rounds of the ground, I've done all 20 without cutting corners. So I think the Navy directly and indirectly imbibed that discipline in us, because most importantly, which I think is a challenge for the modern day kids and for the modern day player, is time management. And in the armed forces, time management is one of the key factors. So that definitely played a massive role on me. So I would say that a discipline in coaching is turning up on time, coming to the ground with a plan, giving each kid the respective time or due, and most importantly, if I can put it in a nutshell, I would say it makes you a better person.
Definitely. And now, having known you in the cricketing world in the US for some time, I know one thing about you, which is you're the first one in to practice and you're the last one out. So some of these non-cricket related, I shouldn't call them skills, I would say values is the right word for it, that one picks up in their formative years, and certainly your time at the naval forces, and also your time training in Mumbai, which I would consider formative years. Some of those values have still stayed with you. At this point, it's become a habit. It's become like a second nature. And I agree, it plays such a huge role in a person's success over time, not just as a player, but in general with life too.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I said, when kids start learning a skill, we tell them it takes about 90 odd days of repetitions for you to understand it, to understand the skill, for it to feel natural, for it to become an unconscious movement, right? And I've been doing it for more than 30 years. So it's as you rightly pointed out, it's part of my nature now. I also take pride in it, of being the first one last out of the ground. I think when a coach is there waiting for the players, it also sends a subtle signal to the players that they need to be on time, because they value your time as well. And those set the environment and breeding grounds for success, I would say.
Yeah. Maybe this is a good seg into the transition from a player to a coach. So what prompted that decision? It obviously sounds like a very natural thing to do, because you still wanted to stay connected as a coach, and there's still so much that you had that you wanted to express by way of coaching, and you still accomplished a lot in terms of your academics with I think 3 bachelor's degrees.
Yeah, you're right.
and a list of certifications on the coaching side. So you spent a lot of time uh, in also keeping up with all the advancements that were happening in coaching. And so maybe talk us through and take us through that journey of transition from player to coach, and again, some of the early lessons that you learned with coaching.
Yeah, pretty interesting. Most players, when they're at the peak of their game or when they're really enjoying the sport, they really rarely pay attention to what are they going to do after their playing days are over. And I was no different. If I may take it, I had a commanding officer by the name of Mr. Late Surendra Pratap, God bless his soul. That gentleman one day during a meet of ours called all of us senior guys and gently asked us a question, and he says, "So what's your next plans? Where are you guys going to do? You're touching 30 now, and what are you planning to do?" And trust me, we had a couple of Arjuna awardees, we had a couple of Olympians, a few Asian Games guys who had represented India in the Asian Games, and none of us had an answer to that. So that got me thinking about what do I want to do after my playing days are over. And being from the forces, being a guy who was a little fit and stuff like that. So the first thing that I did when I stopped playing was I went into a fitness trainer program. Okay, so it was one of the earlier pioneer programs back in India, the Sports Medicine Center in Pune. And at that particular place, yeah, I did learn what is training and how can it affect you, how can it improve you as a player, and what can you bring to the table as a trainer. And my first assignment with the cricket team was as a trainer or the strength and conditioning coach, as they do call them nowadays. Trust me, I did not enjoy the job. Okay, because
that was not sort of a thing to do, right? Like that was still way too early. Like there was a lot of emphasis put on training and practice, but not as much on physical strength conditioning and endurance and fitness.
Right. I agree with you. It was still in an era back in 2001, 2002. Fitness as an industry or as a social norm wasn't as widespread. But yes, I would agree that it was an uphill battle making the guys do those extra laps or those extra push-ups and stuff like that. And I really didn't enjoy it in terms of I really felt this was a good job I was doing, but it wasn't my calling. Okay, so I was really searching for where can I add more to, to the players or to the team that I'm working with. So my journey kept moving ahead, kept searching for what I want to do. So I had this natural knack of communicating with people because I was a captain of a team of Ranji squad, also of the naval squad, which had half a dozen or more players who had played at the elite level. So I could communicate to them, and I would start communicating various facets of my experience with a younger batch, and they seemed receptive about it, and that made me happy. So taking it from there, then in 2003, I attended the Level A coaching program of the BCCI, as it was called in those days.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's called a Level 1, but it was called the Level A. And it was the first course held out of the National Cricket Academy, Bangalore, and was held in Mumbai. I did well in that course. I managed to top that course. It was a course done specifically for first-class cricketers. And Mumbai rewarded me with an under-16 camp. And taking it from there, I thought that I knew everything after doing a first course. And yeah, and I still remember the rubbish that I taught those guys at the camp, to be very, very honest. So basically, there's a message here for all ex-players who are getting into coaching that you've got to educate yourself. It's not that you teach them the way that you learned it. It's not necessarily the only way or the right way. So at that moment of time, I thought it was the right way. I apologize to all those who are watching this and who are part of that first group that I taught there. But my intent was always good. I wanted them to perform better. And at the end of the camp, when I did an analysis, I realized I know very little of the game. I know very little of the game. I thank a few of the players who questioned my decisions and who questioned my skills that made me think. From there onwards, in 2005, to further educate myself, I went to this place called the National Institute of Sports, which is based out of Punjab, Patiala. It's the premier training institute in the country for all Olympic sports. And cricket used to be a major part of that institute. So I spent a whole year there learning the sciences behind the sport and also cricket. And we got a lot of hands-on experiences there, both in theory and in practical. And it would be an 8 to 10 hour program every day of just learning the game and then trying it out with our fellow colleagues, our fellow peers in the batch, and also with the trainees who used to come out in the evening. So I would say that sort of gave me a base, that gave me a ground. I do consider them my alma mater, and somebody who really gave me a base to move forward in this. And that ignited my passion towards the sport. Unsatisfied that I was with what I had learnt, the BCCI then did their next course, which was called the Level B. And I was shortlisted. I went and did well there. And I put in a lot of effort. It's a very taxing course. Over a period of 15 days, you are stressed to many exams and stuff. Came out topper in that course. And then NCA realized, or the National Cricket Academy of the BCCI realized, here's a guy who seems to understand the game. And that's when I came into national recognition and I started doing some national camps from there onwards. But my hunger for the sport just kept increasing. The knowledge or the thirst, I would say, was something that I really wanted to take it forward. At the end of that year, there was an option to learn what is sports and motion analysis. And this was just getting into the country at that time, 2006. And India was waking up to performance analysis and stats and diagrams and wagon wheels and stuff like that. So we were one of the pioneers in that batch who went there and did a course. And I seem to have done well there as well. And I topped that course as well. And then NCA nominated me as one of the analysts for one of the camps of the BCCI. So my whole coaching journey took again a downturn from a guy who was on the field, actively involved with the players and stuff. Suddenly I was behind a laptop and gathering data and giving it to the coaches and stuff. I did it for a year odd, and finding myself, I realized this is not for me. Hats off to those guys who can really focus for that long, to the analysts who are now really giving us fantastic data. They're doing a great job. And I just moved on to carrying on coaching, coached the Ranji Trophy squad after that. And then went on a few years later to do my Level C, which is the pinnacle of coaching in the country. And at the moment, the BCCI has not had another, another next level course, even though we have done a few refresher programs. They have kept us abreast of the going-ons. 2016, again, I got another challenge. I wanted to learn how to train international cricketers. So I was doing a lot of first-class cricketers and stuff, and then I got the opportunity to go to the ICC. I thank the Andhra Cricket Association who willing to give me a 50% scholarship to go and train at the ICC. Went there, did a year-long course with them in Dubai, and did well there, got an offer to join them as one of the developmental coaches in the ICC, but turned it down because there was still some work left at the state association where we were working towards helping get some guys into becoming test cricketers or international cricketers. So I continued working there, and so it's been a continuous journey that I've been learning, upgrading my skills, because the sport evolves, the game evolves, but most importantly, I think the challenge for me as a person was, can I evolve with the kid more than, me bringing my years of experience? Can I fine-tune that experience to the current generation? My message to all the coaches who keep working out there, or all the potential coaches are going there, we should just remember one thing: we are coaching in their genre. We are coaching in their generation, right? So we've got to learn their language. We've got to learn what makes them tick, and that calls for constant upgradation of your skills. Uh, the one thing I would say at the end of all this is that I have learned to coach the player first and the skill second.
Very, very interesting, very insightful. So back in the day when, um, for a young person pursuing college and career, uh, the only one or two path they saw was either it's commerce or business, or something in science. This we're talking in the 80s and 90s, India. Here's a person who decided, no, I'm going to take a different path. I have a passion. I'm going to pursue this passion. Along the way, I have discipline, right? I'm talking about you, obviously, here. There is discipline and there is the determination to make it work, make it happen. And sort of this constant process of finding a better and better way, and as you mentioned, evolving to where the sport is and where the sport is going. It sounds
Absolutely.
like all these aspects have brought you here to this present day. So you're a wealth of knowledge and you're a wealth of experience. And I want to delve deeper into these aspects, right? So, you've probably answered this to some extent, but what are when you're looking for, you've been now in like head coach positions. So when you're looking for assistant coaches or coaches that work with you, what are the key things that you're looking for in some of the younger, less experienced coaches? What are the key skills you're looking for?
Great. So I look for two key skills. Just two key skills. One, what is his enthusiasm that he brings to the session? And two, is hunger to learn the game. Because my experiences have told me that knowledge can be gained, but your attitude, your enthusiasm, and your hunger, and your willingness to serve the player rather than looking at the player as a vehicle for you, that is what I'd look for in a player, in a coach who I want to work with or who I'd like to be associated with.
That makes a lot of sense. Another aspect about you is over a period of time, over multiple decades of your coaching, what I found unique is you've coached at all levels and you still continue to do so. So in Visakhapatnam, you're heading the coaching role for MSK Prasad Institute. Here in the US, you're the head coach at ACAC, which is one of the most successful and pioneering programs, cricket programs in the US. So you're doing coaching at youth level. You're also coaching some of the leading adult teams, so minor league teams and city teams in the US. In the past, as you mentioned, you've coached, Ranji Trophy teams and teams that have represented in Mushtaq Ali Trophy and other tournaments. How are you able to adjust to the challenges that come with coaching at all these different levels? Or again, has it become second nature given all
That's
these
a great question. That's a great question. I think the challenge that a coach always faces is trying to assess the team as early as possible, trying to assess the players he is working with as early as possible. And that's why I keep reiterating, unless you know your players, unless you know what they react to and how they respond to situations, you will not be able to make a lasting impact on them, or you will not be able to coach them per se, right? I think, or I personally feel, if I have to put it this way, is that when a kid comes to you, he's come with certain expectations to you. He's come to you, or even a senior pro, he's come with certain expectations for you. Do coaches listen to them? Do we really hear what they are saying? Or are we just listening to give them a response? So I think this is my guiding philosophy. I ask pertinent, open-ended questions till I'm able to really get into what the player says. Because every time you meet a player, they're a bit guarded at first. You've got to get them to open up, right? So once a player has opened up, it doesn't matter whether he's an 8-year-old kid or whether he's a 30-year-old veteran, right? They will tell you exactly what you want. That makes your job easier. That makes your job easier. And the other aspect that I've learned over a period of time, can you make the player feel secure? Can you make the player feel that you are his friend? Like, I'd like to share a small example. Like, when I moved from Mumbai, I played a bit of cricket in Delhi as well, so I've got the best of the West and the North, and I moved down south into Andhra on another coaching assignment. And I realized that the kids there are a little withdrawn.
Mhm.
The kids there are not as communicative as there. And my first assignment to all of them was to stop addressing me as sir, which they found very difficult. So we had certain awards and rewards for the guys who would do it. At the same time, we ensured that the guys who kept repeating sir were given some sort of an incentive to change from sir to coach. So that just breaking down that barrier of a sir to a coach, I thought sort of built a bridge between them and me, and that opened up a lot of channels of communication and a lot of channels for us to work together as partners. Okay. The other thing that I think it's important is you've got to build your communication skills. Your tone of voice is more important than what you actually say. How you say it, than what you actually say.
Mhm.
So that comes with a bit of experience. I would say I would practice talking in the mirror, looking at myself, seeing my body language. Okay, to go this, I read a book, did a lot of YouTube research on what is body language, how to assess the guy in front, and all that stuff. So all this has really helped me break down the barriers between age, and I think to a large extent that has been one of the prime reasons why I was able to connect up and down the age spectrum, or the skill spectrum, if I have to say.
And the connection is very, very important, as you said, because till that connection happens, the player, whether it's an 8-year-old or a veteran, is not going to open up. And you first want to focus on making sure that the player is opened up to feedback, or some constructive feedback, and to help the player actually understand his or her game, and that becomes very crucial. Maybe I can push you a little bit further to say, once a player is opened up, what happens next?
Yeah. So I think you got the meeting out of your hand, number one. You'll find them talking to you on things even other than cricket. I think these are indications for me, right? That a kid is now, or a player, I would say rather, is now ready to trust you in totality. And when that trust happens, that's when you can actually implement the change in the player, right? I think sometimes we do rush into that situation as coaches because of certain situations or particular thing, but the top results or the end results always come when we allow that to happen organically. Okay, and once the player trusts you, you've developed a bond for life. You are with him more importantly than with his failures, than his success. Okay, he knows that he has somebody that he can get back to and refer to, right, whenever he wants to. I'd like to really stress upon this point here that coaches who are really, really successful are rarely seen when the team is successful or the player is successful.
Right. True.
Okay. So the key for a coach is when your ward or when your player is challenged, you be the wall in front and keep him, protect him. But when he's at the top of his game, just let him flow, just let him go ahead, and you will find that to a large extent you have been what he has hoped for to be.
Right. So patience and time is what is needed. A player doesn't develop overnight. And it sounds like as a coach, uh, one's attitude and one's approach to a player needs to be, you have to be with him or her through thick and thin. Support him during his failures and keep encouraging him and let him be himself
Absolutely.
when he or she is successful. Very interesting. Also, I think cricket has evolved quite a lot, um, not just with T20 or with even shorter formats of the game as we are now seeing, but even Test cricket has evolved. Um, and it seems like with every season of the IPL that I watch, uh, trying to decipher like the strategy or the tactics that are being employed by different teams, it seems like the sport is evolving at an even faster rate now than ever. As a coach, how do you keep up with uh, some of the tried and tested methods of coaching that you have employed and been very successful with? At the same time, keep up with the rate of evolution of the sport.
So, pretty interesting question. I guess that's a task on everyone's hand, on everybody who's involved in coaching and who's in leadership, is how do we stay abreast of our times. So, yeah, but if you actually go back and dig deeper into the sport, and if you look at the guys who've been successful over decades, you will find that all of them have very strong foundational skills to what they're executing there. So, in my opinion, the base of every skill that you're seeing evolving, always there is a strong foundation lying behind it. So I would say things like balance, for example, things like agility, things like movement, anticipation, judgment, they still remain the same across whether it's a T20 game or whether it's a test match game. Yes, I agreed, in the test match, as the game gets on, it's more about your temperament that is tested. Initially, I would say every batter who goes into bat is initially tested on his technique. So you have bowlers bowling you different sort of balls, and in swing, out swing, testing whether this guy can handle it. And then they go on to test them with their tactics. You have particular field sets once he's there. And finally, when they realize they can't get him out, his technique is tight, his tactics are good, then they test his temperament. Okay, then they start restricting his runs and making him create an error. And if you go to see, it's similar across formats. Okay, every batter that walks into bat, irrespective of what situation it is, okay, unless it's the last ball of a T20 game or somewhere, or the situation demands it, goes through 3 phases in his particular inning at the crease, so this journey at the crease. And during my training, and also I make my players aware of it, is that I call it the triple S theory, right? I said, does a player have the skill to survive? Has he got the survival skills to go there first and protect his wicket from which the opposition is trying to take him out? Number 2, does he have the capability, or the second S, which I call, is the single rotation? Can he get off strike and go to the other end? And the third S is, does he have stroke making capability based on his strengths? Right? So every player will face these 3 journeys: the survivability, the single taking, and playing to the situation or hitting the strokes based on what the situation demands. Now, if you take it in T20 cricket, or 50 over format, or test cricket, players are tested on these 3 things again, right? So if your practice is evolving, that if your game is evolving, and training has those concepts in it, you will find that as you get into various aspects of the game, Agreed, the time frame will be shorter. It will be squeezed, the number of overs, the number of balls as they get less. But the whole base, as I keep coming back, your base stays the same, right? So coming back to your question of the challenges between T20 and Test cricket is modern kids, they watch a lot of limited over formats, they're more tuned to that, they're more open to playing the reverse sweep first up than maybe the generation of the earlier generation who would still coach vertical bat shots first and thing. But on the hindsight, if you actually look at it, today a reverse sweep and you get out is not as criticized as it was in the earlier days. So it's become more acceptable. And when things become more acceptable, the players are willing to go out and experiment that much more. Right? I think the challenge in, if you have to take it from Test cricket to T20 cricket is, in Test cricket it was always called a game of Vs. You were coached to play in your V. Today you're coached to play 360. So I would say you have your Vs and your Xs. So your front and the back is V together. All right. So as a coach, the challenge you face when training these other kids is, I call it, have you identified this individual strengths? Is your base skill as a coach strong enough to identify his skills so that you can suggest to him those particular strokes or those particular areas or how he can survive and play the game and succeed over there, right? So go out, get your education done, and I'm sure this will not be a challenge as you go forward.
Right. So it sounds like the basics and the platform that a player needs to establish in the early days, it still remains the same. And it's a long journey as a player goes from youth, under 12, under 14, and then under 17, and eventually playing in adult tournaments. It's a journey, and you have to continue to refine your skill set. And over time, you learn a lot about the game, not just by playing, but also by watching other players play, playing alongside other players, also watching the international cricket or IPL that's there on TV, learning from all of that to pick up on what is the right temperament for each of the formats for the game, and not just the formats of the game, each of the phases of the format, especially in Test cricket, as you mentioned, there are a lot of phases, and in some cases or sometimes you have to play the conservative, Test cricket, and in certain times when it is favorable to do, you become more of a 360 player and score in certain times, especially at opportune times, so that you're able to put up the high score even when there's less time left in the game, as we saw in how England is playing cricket these days, or like how India played the last time we visited Australia.
Absolutely. See, I think if you look at all the modern players, whether it's a Virat Kohli or Rohit Sharma, Hardik Pandya, or even somebody who's coming up like a Rinku Singh, they've all been through the grind where they've actually learned the basics of batting. Okay? None of them have got out with the very first, I started out at the junior level and said, I'm going to start reverse sweeping from ball one. This is the first shot I'm going to learn. It has not happened that way. We've still not had that evolution happen where you land up at a center and the coach teaches you the reverse sweep, the first shot. The prime reason for that is cricket still remains to a large extent a side-on game. To a large extent. Okay? There have been variations of it. And balance and alignments and timing and all this also play a vital role in how you execute it, whether you're bowling or whether you're batting or whether you're fielding, right? So if I as a coach have to look at this sport as a whole, when I see a young player come to me, I would even put it down to say, you're building the foundation of your house. You can build whatever you want on top of the foundation in any structure or design. But the most important thing is your foundation strong enough to take all those variations in design, right? To take all that. A reverse sweep, for example, is still a bat that's lifted back. It's still a foot that goes to the ball. So you're doing two of the fundamentals right. The third shot you're hitting it in the opposite direction.
Right.
But your eyes are still looking at the ball. Your head is still going to the ball. So just throwing an example at you, right? So I would suggest to kids who are watching it, who are there out in the sport, go out, get your fundamentals right, and from there you will know once you hit the park what strengths you have. Play more matches as you go forward, play a lot of games, and that will allow you to experiment, and that will allow you to find your niche and scoring areas. So that's my take on, how to progress from being a test cricketer, T20, or even vice versa.
Yeah, this is a good seg into the next topic of discussion, which is batting, and I want to start at the basics, especially because it's so important. So, and we generally hear a lot about some of these aspects of coaching or training, which is get your basics right. In your experience, what are some of the basics that a player at any level, but more importantly at youth level, a beginner, needs to establish to be able to progress well in cricket? And I hope you can tie this with what you mentioned earlier about why having the right equipment is so important, because I feel like those are kind of joined at the hip, getting your basics right and also getting the right equipment.
Yeah. So I totally agree with you. As I said, I go back from where I started the sport, and getting the right equipment was a massive challenge. Now, for example, if I have to take batting per se, and we are talking about basics. Basics is balance. It's balance in motion, okay? And to be balanced, you've got to have the equipment in your hand, or the equipment that you're using has to be perfectly balanced, okay? We all know that all are human beings. We're all different. We're all made differently, different height, different hand sizes, different leg sizes. But most importantly, if we are using a tool or using an equipment, for example, if we're using a bat, that's not suited to our own structure, our own body, we are going to compromise the fundamentals of the game or the basics of the game in some way. And it's an avalanche sort of a syndrome. It may start out small, like something like, for example, if you've got a bat that's too heavy and you're holding it, to lift that bat, you're holding it with your bottom hand. It may seem minuscule that just one part of that whole structure of your legs, hands, and one hand is going wrong, but that has an avalanche aspect. The way you pick up the bat and the way you bring it down is all going to be affected. So once that's affected, your impact on the ball and where the ball is going is also going to be affected. So at the end of the day, a small error which may seem minuscule to you at that time, is the outcome is never going to be satisfactory the way you want it to. So when we keep saying we talk about the basics, we are talking about the way a player stands, we are talking about his stance, we are talking about his grip, okay? We are talking about the balance of his bat, how the bat feels in his hand. Every top cricketer picks the bat and the first thing that he says, great feel, right? So what exactly is this feel? This feel is something that you feel it's made for you. You feel that this feels comfortable based on the size of your hands. This feels that the weight distribution of the bat is absolutely perfect, the way you want it to be, okay? When you tap it on the ground, this feels the right height where your head and your shoulders are in the right position. Too short and you're bent too much, too tall and you're too upright, okay? If your hands are smaller and you have a thicker handle, which is a challenge which I do see most of the young kids coming into the academies, big heavy bats, big handles, because those are of a cheaper variety, but it does not solve the purpose, right? When I brief a parent, I tell them one simple thing. I said, if your child is ill and if you can afford it, you'll go to a specialist, not a compounder. So why is it that you, when you're choosing an equipment for your child, which he's going to use for a longer period, why are you going for the first available option? You're not getting something that's fine-tuned to his needs. Okay, it's like you're taking a medication for stomach pain when all you got is a headache. So it doesn't solve the purpose, right? So choosing the right equipment, I think in my thing, people are okay with gloves, people are still okay with their pads, they're not okay with their helmets and their bats. Because those are things which needs to set perfectly on the head, and it doesn't shake about because it affects their eyesight. And also it gives them a sense of security, and the bat needs to be fine-tuned or customized, I would say, to their particular needs, because that bat is something that when the ball hits the middle of the bat is going to send a vibration to his brain that's going to feel great, and that all comes from that, having a bat that he feels greatly comfortable with. So if I have to say, batting as a whole is as mental as it is technical, but most importantly, it also needs great equipment for the outcome to be what the player wants it to be.
And that is why you are involved with VLLOW Sports. You've co-founded, and here you have a bat.
Absolutely.
That you want to show. I
Yeah.
know these
So-
mics prevent us from talking
Yeah,
about
so
it
so
in detail,
these
but-
so this is the bat that we sort of did a lot of research. We did a lot of R&D on. We did meet. I've lost count of how many manufacturers we met who could come down to our specifications. But having a founding team that was high on quality, having met people like you who are who wanted to do things either perfectly or not do them at all. And most importantly, I think your first statement, he says, let's make the iPhone of bats where there are no complaints. There are no complaints from the end user. The end user only wants more, right? That is something that I really liked, and that's what really drew me to VLLOW Sports. And I think they've identified the problem. It's a genuine problem. It's a genuine problem. The parents know it's a genuine problem. Most importantly, I think you will get a bat if you purchase it from VLLOW Sports. That's quality. That's suited to your needs, and very few people promising you this at this moment. It's not a run-of-the-mill piece of equipment. It's an equipment that's made to specificity. That's what I would like to say. Yeah.
Especially because this is such a high-value equipment. I'm not talking necessarily about the cost of the bat, and I like your analogy about going to a specialist doctor when your child is sick. But the value that a cricket bat provides to a batsman, especially a specialist batsman, is huge relative to his cost.
I
And so-
agree. I agree in totality. Unlike other sports, batting is penalized the most. Baseball, you get 3 strikes. Football, you can come back. Hockey, you can come back. Chess, you've got 64 coins to move around. In batting, you get one chance, and if you're out, you're back. And most of the time, the bat takes the brunt of it, back in the dressing room, right? So I totally agree that the player needs to feel that he's got the best bit of equipment, because the challenge that a batter faces is totally different from any other challenge in any history of sport anywhere, right? It's a hit or miss. He can practice 24 hours a day for the whole year and still go out and get a 0. Now, I'm not saying that having this bat in your hand may stop you from doing that, but I definitely would like to add that having the right piece of equipment gives you a bigger chance to succeed. And that's what we want to put into the hands of each kid.
And everything from the shape of the handle, the thickness of the profile, where the meat of the bat rests, whether it's more mid or whether it's low, the toe of the bat, whether it's shaped rounded or squared, all these aspects tend to play a huge role in the overall balance of the bat and how it feels to a particular player. And that's so important, because at the end of the day, if the bat feels right to a batter who's walking onto the pitch with, I want to say, some nerves, um, needs to feel comfortable that he or she has the right bat um, with them, and they are, I guess, just in a better frame of mind, from at least from that perspective. That combined with the right training and the right basics and the right platform helps propel that player's journey a whole lot more.
Absolutely.
And it's interesting that even in this day and age, we feel like the the way these bats are manufactured and distributed and sold hasn't really changed.
Yeah, I agree with you totally, Bhavik. It's not evolved from generations ahead, and it's about time. It's about time, and stressing on the point that you actually said about different bats. Now, when you go to Australia, the bounce is higher. You need a bat where the meat is a little more, or the sweet spot of the bat is a little higher, right? You're playing maybe in a Sharjah where the bounce is a little lower. You need your sweet spot a little more lower. You'll find that in the shorter format of the game, you need thicker edges, right? Or you need a bat that's slightly a few grams more because you want to muscle the ball over the ropes. In Test cricket, you just may have a bat that's a few grams less, right? Because you got to play longer innings. Okay, so all these aspects, you can only get a bat like that if it's customized. It's, you may be the lucky one who would find one bat like that, but if you're in the sport for the long haul and you're playing over a longer period of time, the time is absolutely right to get your bat customized. I've known badminton players, tennis players of top level who even get their strings tensioned to a particular tension that suits them specifically, and every bat is strung the same way, right? And tennis and cricket are so correlated, right? There's a stopgap game. You got to feel that bat or racket in your hand after every point or every ball, okay? So do place a premium on choosing the right equipment. Do place your do go out there and do your research before you actually invest in a bat. It's going to be worth it, is my advice.
Awesome. So moving on from the basics and establishing a platform and going further down a player's journey. Let's say you have a player who's now relatively experienced and has established some of these basics that you've mentioned. How do you take a player and what would you do and what the player needs to do to further, go down the journey of becoming a good batsman? I also remember in one of our earlier conversations, you had mentioned that it takes 10 plus years to fully develop a batsman, just because there's so many different variables. It's a high risk, high reward game for the batter. One mistake and you're done. It's unlike any other sport, as you mentioned. So how does one go down the journey of becoming a better and better batter? Not to mention that it's not it doesn't move in a straight line. There's challenges at every level, especially as you jump the age group. So maybe you can delve deeper into a player's journey. Going back to the core question is, what does a coach need to do, or what you would do, and what does a player need to do to succeed?
Okay. So when you actually start out with a player at the beginning of their journey, I would say it's more an instruction-based sort of a thing, and they play less games. Okay, they are still understanding the body movements. They are still out there discovering what works and what does not work for them. Now the challenge for a coach comes in once that player has found out a few things and he started getting success on a more regular basis, right? Interesting question is, how do you take them forward? What is it that you can tell them or do for them that will allow them to be successful? A lot of players have discovered later in their particular journey that it's not all about the skill. Because the skill, as you rightly said, takes about 12 to 14,000 repetitions of each skill. I'll repeat, 12 to 14,000 repetitions of each skill for you to be a master of it or to be able to do it irrespective of what are the pressures surrounding that particular situation or moment. Now, for the layman, it may seem 14,000, that's okay. I'll do 500 a day and I'll be done in a couple of months' time. Batting is different in this aspect. Because you've got to learn to play the cover drive. Then you've got to learn to play the cover drive to the left of the fielder and the right of the fielder. Then you've got to learn to play the cover drive over the fielder. So you've got 14,000 into 4 now, right? Then you've got to learn to play the cover drive to an off spinner, to a left arm spinner, to an in-swing bowler and an out-swing bowler. A left arm bowler who's bowling over the stump and around the stump.
Right.
Okay? So because there is so much of variation to this particular sport and it takes so long for you to master all that. Okay? And trust me, a lot of this mastery can only happen in the central wicket. N amount of nets are good enough to train a skill, to hone a skill, which should be done as a young upcoming player. You're spending a lot of time in the nets. But mastering the skill requires more and more time that you spend in the center of the wicket. On the other side, you do get a lot of players who look really good in the nets, but they're unable to convert it into the match. Now, good players, after some time, they have realized that the game is played between the 2 years. Right? So they spend a lot of time on not only understanding their game, but understanding their thoughts. So as a coach, there are certain times you have to step out of the way. If you don't know how to help him reach into his mind, how to help him understand his mind, there are sports psychologists on board who will help you do that. Hire him, get him on for a few sessions. Let them go there, let them interact with them. I'm sure they will be able to unlock the key to helping the kid or the player understand his own thoughts. Okay? Because at the end of the day, when he's there in the center making decisions, it is his decision. Okay. As coaches, as we get to players who are established, it changes from becoming an instructor to a facilitator. From a facilitator, then we become a problem creator. So when I say problem creator is, we throw problems at him. We take him out to the center pitch, give him certain restrictions and make him find ways into that particular or solutions to that particular problem. Because each time a batter goes out into the center, the bowler is throwing a problem at him. He's questioning his skills in different ways. So the coaches need to move from technique to be tactical masters. Mm-hmm. Right? From technique to thought process kings. Right? So understanding that and helping the kid realize or the player realize that as you get better, as you get into the elite group, it's all about getting your processes, understanding your processes and trusting those processes. That is what is going to give them the success as they go ahead. I hope that makes sense.
That it does. So there is a lot that needs to happen, and it's a journey because these 14,000 repetitions that you talked about, and by the way, that's just one stroke, right? And there's different variations of that, not to mention there's many other strokes. And so a player needs to be open to putting that much time to train as a batter and get better and better and find the right coach or the right environment where he or she can train. And then eventually the coach, as you mentioned, problem creation, needs to take the player outside his comfort zone and put him in different situations and see how he reacts to those.
And responds to them.
And
right?
responds to them. And then refinement, which seems like it's a constant process.
Right.
It seems like, and I've seen a few, youth level players here in the US. Everybody wants to play games. Everybody wants to score. I mean, who doesn't? There are very few who are determined to put in the time that is necessary to go through this rigorous training. Not to mention, as you mentioned, the game is played between 2 years. So get the mindset to a point where they are able to, follow the coach's instructions, but also over time understand their game. I think it was VVS Lakshman who said this about you, which I saw in a paper article somewhere, that you're not only great at developing the right skills for players, but you're also a mental coach.
Yeah,
Maybe delve
those were
deeper
high
into-
words of praise from Mr. VVS Lakshman for me, but I really thank him for that. And that also inspired me to get into reading, to get into mind management, to start researching what it's about, to get into, managing men. And that also drew me to courses in Australia where I did a sports on managing high performing teams. And then player centered coaching is another course that I did from the University of Queensland. So my suggestion was that if you just go out and research, there's enough knowledge in this world at this moment for you to be a better coach. Touching upon these topics, you said few players have this challenge of, they're good, but they don't find time to train, they don't want to train. And my philosophy over the years, I've formed a philosophy which I go by the 70s. Okay, I call it the 70s that will turn your potential to performance. Okay. So these 70s, which form the crux of my coaching, goes like this. I said the first and foremost, the first T I call is the talent identification. Has the player identified himself, or along with the people he's there, what is his talent? Is he a natural aggressive guy? Is he a grafter? Does he want to be a test cricketer? Does he want to be a T20 player? What basically is the talent that suits him? Is he good square of the wicket, or is he good going down the ground? So that talent identification needs to happen a little earlier, right? It also involves your physical skills, your natural agility, your ability to learn and stuff like that. So I think talent identification is one. Number two, I says, of the T is the thought processes. How can we learn and develop our thought processes to be able to respond and think the way we want the thought to be in the situation? Okay, that's another of the successes of T. Okay, then the third T is the team. Who's the team that you're surrounding yourself with? Who are the people around you? Are they motivating you? Are they lifting you up? Are they really getting to what you call this, getting you or pushing you to go where you want to go, right? Then I say the most important thing is trust. Trust and transparency of having these discussions with either coach or mentor or whoever is there that you trust, your teammate as well. And have these open discussions wherein you are not holding anything back, because whatever you hold back is going to hold you back as the challenges get tougher. So that trust and transparency is another of the T's that needs to be. For me, one of the most important things that top players do, which young players can learn, is time management. We have to understand that the T, time management, we all got the same number of hours. How you manage that, how you prioritize your day is going to be one of the most important things. You've got to go to school, you've got to go to college, you've got to go to a job, you've got ad shoots, but you still got to manage those 12 hours. So time management is one of those things that academies and coaches, if they can really help a kid with that, I think that's also better. A lot of stress early, some may call it the game method, but I call it the tactics. If a kid is exposed to tactics early, he learns how to play the game. So the difference between knowing how to play a stroke and knowing how to play the game is conversion of potential to performance, right? So tactics at an early age, practicing a lot of tactical skills is the other T that is successful. Then comes the other T that I say is the use of technology. Today, technology can connect you to the best coaches in the world. It can give you the best stats, the best videos, review your own games and stuff like that. Are you using it, right? And The final T that I says is your training program.
Mm.
How scientifically is it catered for you to peak at the right times? Right? So once a player is able to get these 7 T's right, at one time as a coach I used to think the eighth T was Thompson, but then I realized it's never me. I've always believed it's the individual, right? It has taught me over time that you do make a difference, but it's not you all, right? So I think these 7 T's, if a player is able to follow, and academies and coaches are able to follow, and I always stress, having the right equipment, right, will definitely get you where you want to go.
So it's not so much nature, but more nurture. And there's a variety of aspects of that. Although nature does play a role, because eventually only a handful or very few, a fraction, make it through the rigors of training and do well over time. But definitely it's a lot more nurture for a kid that perhaps doesn't have a lot of the things that naturally are suitable for a certain skill within a sport. The quantity and quality of training combined with the right mindset does lead to better and better results over time. Also think your metaphor here about how a coach or a coaching is similar to like a street light. If you can describe that for the benefit of our viewers.
Yeah, so that's a very interesting thing. When I was asked by one of the reporters, so what do you think about coaching? So I said a coach is like a street light, and what I actually meant to that is a street light turns up on time. It's always shining. Under the street light, you will find people passing by not recognizing there's a light there. You will find people who are sitting under the light and having fun. You will also see people who are studying under certain street lights because they don't have access to other places. A coach is similar, right? You may be the best coach around. People will pass by and not recognize you. That's fine. You will find people who will come to you who just want to have fun. That's fine as well. And there will be some people who will come and want to learn from you. And those are the guys who you will also be attracted to, I guess. But the most important thing is, are you as a coach being unbiased, being there for everyone and shining, spreading that knowledge that you have with them for their betterment, to ensure that everyone who comes under that light, of knowledge, is not affected in a negative way. Right? You're sending them back positive. So that's what I related to the coach and the light. And yeah, just stressing on that one point, I also think when I really write about, when I say, how do we recognize talent and stuff like that? For me, one word I would like to say is that learning itself is a talent. The ability of a player to learn quicker than his peers and move ahead is a talent in itself. And most of the top players would have learnt a skill much faster, much quicker than most of the other peers he played around in that time. Okay, and a lot of this has to come through visualization and mental management and imagery and stuff. So I would encourage parents, coaches, and players to go out and experiment with that. And VLLOW Sports is always ready to help. But if you do need us, do reach out.
Right. So be the best from a coaching perspective. Be the best and most bright, shining street light possible.
Unbiased.
Unbiased is an important part of it. But from a player's perspective, take advantage of that, right? And also to some extent, take ownership of your own journey, of your own goals. Don't necessarily just rely on coaches. As you mentioned, the coaches are unbiased and are willing to impart the knowledge that they have, but it's up to the player to have the skill and talent to learn from the coaches.
Absolutely. I'd like to quote my good friend here, Naushad Khan, whose both kids have played under 19 World Cup, and he uses one thing very beautifully. He says every player comes in with two bags into his cricketing journey. One bag is filled with experience and the other is filled with luck. So he says, get your experiences quickly in a different varieties before your luck runs out. And that will ensure that, you are at the top there and experienced enough to handle every situation that comes your way. Okay, so the same way I would tell players who are there, do remember, if you want something, if you really desire something, if you're determined to get it, and you're disciplined enough to get it, do approach the coach. Don't hold back. Go out, ask for it. Trust me, the coaches are more than willing to go out of their way to help you. Just take that first step, make the effort.
We've covered so much in this discussion, and there's so many aspects of cricket that I've learned in this discussion. Not just some of the values that are important, the importance of communication, connection with the players, what a player needs to do to be successful, the right cricket equipment, the mental aspects. Each of this can be a podcast of its own, and hopefully in future we'll delve deeper into some of these aspects. I want to touch on one last thing before we end this episode, and this is for the benefit of our viewers, because cricket is such a evolving sport, and it's growing at such a pace. If you had to get your crystal ball out and look 5, 7, 10 years out, where do you see the sport evolving? And what are some of the new innovations that you're seeing, either in cricket or in some other sports, and how they can be better applied to cricket?
Okay. A great question. I think, I think technology has made all of us stay connected no matter what part of the world we are in. I think that's the great level. It has leveled the playing field across. I think one of the prime reasons we see people from smaller towns making it big over the last decade and a half, right? Earlier, you see champions and top players coming mostly from larger cities and bigger towns, but technology has what you say, leveled the barrier. And if I honestly see our sport or sport in general across the world, sport has always depended on an audience. It has always depended on audience, always depended on the cheer, and players thrive off that. I think the more involved the audience is or the spectator it is, and the whole concept of T20 cricket is to make it a spectator sport, is to make the sport more enjoyable for a larger audience. You do now get to see women, children in matches, which was never there before. It was only the men in the test games sitting there. So now it's become a family affair. Now it's time for us to give them their say, for them to speak up, to get their voices heard a little bit more. You do get to see at parties women taking active part in sporting discussions, which I think is a large untapped area of our sport. I also know there are a couple of women who are now coaching their own kids, who have now, due to the access of technology, got into coaching. The women's team by itself, or women's cricket by itself, has really taken the world by storm. There are more stadiums filled nowadays for women's cricket as well, right? So I think player engagement, spectator engagement, the giving voice to the spectator, spreading the game to other parts of the globe. And I think T20 was largely invented for Europe and the Americas, and it's going to take off here in a big way. There is a lot of push by the ICC. But most importantly, I think, I personally feel, the game is only going to get faster. It's going to get more attractive. It's going to become more popular. Cricket is going to go ahead from here. There's no way it's going to draw back. And I'm excited for the next generation of players. I'm excited for them. I'm also excited for the coaches who are going to be challenged a little more, because they are going to be coaching in a knowledge era. Earlier in the day, the coach could tell you and his word was final. Today you go back and Google it, and then you come back next day and re-question the coach and say, I think you may have got it wrong in a subtle way. So the challenge for coaching is also there, that to get your facts and figures right. And I think coaches are growing in that. They're being more acceptable to say that, yeah, I don't know, but I'll get back to you. And so let's look at it this way. More fans, faster game, more glitz, and a lot more people playing the sport, if I have to put it in short.
Awesome. What are, in your opinion, what are some of the ways in which we can take fan engagement to a whole nother level? I know you follow other sports. Are you seeing some innovation in other sports that can be brought on to cricket?
Absolutely. I think a great way to get the fans involved, and I think we see it a lot in the IPL. Simple cues, like you have polls which say like, who do you think is going to win the game, or should X team or Y team bat first or bowl first? What would be an ideal score? And these are things that people sitting at home gives them the opportunity to be involved in, gives the people the opportunity to stay connected, right? I think that's a way forward, being able to even, some way like choosing your own team, choosing teams for particular situations, for particular matches, choosing your captain, why not? Okay, deciding whether the coach needs to stay back or he needs to be sacked. Okay, I am all for it. The more we get the players involved, the more ownership, the spectators involved or the fans involved, the more ownership they are going to have, and that's only going to grow the sport. The more people are going to come into the sport. So I think it's a win-win for everybody. It's a win for the teams, it's a win for the spectators because they are getting more involved, and at the end of the day, the players know what's making them tick, what the people like who are watching them on television, on TV somewhere, and that I believe is going to be a game changer going forward.
Right. And coaches can help and guide the fans by giving them the right options to choose from.
Absolutely.
So there is still a huge role for the coach, but one can give options and some of the decisions maybe to the fans, which will get them to be more engaged, probably also help in bringing a younger demographic to the game and take the sport forward.
I think you nailed it. The younger demographic needs to be engaged.
Yeah.
Their attention span is, putting it subtly, is very short. So if you don't engage them, they are going to switch channels, right? So I think a lot of apps like Fan Code and all these are doing a great job, and I personally believe that will get the newer kids or the tech savvy kids maybe out of the screens and onto the ground as well, which we want for a healthy nation or a healthy world going forward as well.
Awesome. Coach CD, thank you so much. This has been a great interview episode. This is our first, but I think you have set a very high hurdle for the interviewees to follow. So thank you very much for your time and for taking me up on this opportunity to talk about coaching, players, VLLOW Sports, and I think we'll end it here. But again, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Bhavik. Thank you so much.